I'll be the first to admit, I have not been super excited to play Anthem on whichever one of the launch days I got it on. I think I got it on the final launch day, which might be the 3rd, or maybe the 2nd. It's certainly not the 10-hour version that people got. It's very confusing which so-called AAA video games come out on what day now, because some of them you need to consult star charts or read entrails. Anthem itself had a table that you needed to work out which version you pre-ordered or which subscription service you're on, therefore determining which day you got the game on or how much of the game you got on a certain day. Anyway, that didn't help. That didn't help me get excited for Anthem. The demo didn't help me get excited for Anthem. It was competent, but there was nothing narratively to grab onto with the demo, and the gameplay wasn't all that inspiring. Electronic Arts' existence didn't keep me particularly hyped or excited for Anthem, because EA over the past few years has done nothing to foster trust, only distrust. They've only shown themselves willing to ruin any game they get their hands on now. Star Wars Battlefront 2 has forever made me distrust everything that comes out of that publisher's hole. So all of these things combined didn't put me in the best of moods for Anthem, and I'll fully admit that. I will admit that up front to you when I say, or rather before I say, that Anthem is boring as piss. Cold piss, which you can't even use to, I don't know, warm a hot water pile. I don't know what you could do with hot piss that makes it more interesting than cold piss, but I can only imagine cold piss is more boring than hot piss, and that Anthem is as boring as cold piss. I'm making some assumptions there, but what I won't assume is how tired, how weary, how bored I felt playing Anthem, to the point where even an hour in I wanted to just put Apex Legends on again, which, yes, is also published by EA, but is the EA game that was mega successful recently that EA had nothing to do with, and I posit was successful because EA had nothing to do with it. But anyway, this is Anthem. What is Anthem about? Let's talk about the story. Anthem is about a thing. That's the story. There is a thing. And yeah, there's some more to it than that, but nothing you'll remember. Nothing I've remembered. All I remember is there is a thing. Oh, and there's a bad guy called the Monitor, which fills you with fear. And they shouldn't call a bad guy the Monitor, right? If they're going to make fun of the name Skewer, which they say, we're going to call your big robotic suit a javelin, because a skewer doesn't sound very threatening or interesting. And I'm like, fuck off, mate. If you called yourself the Skewer, I think you're going to do something pretty brutal to me. But that's just me. Anyway, the story of Anthem, there is a thing. Everything else you can't really remember, but don't worry. There's a lot of lore. Not really an engaging story, because the story is just people talking over you while you're trying to play the game, or interrupting the game, so you stand there doing fuck all for ages while they chat shit and just throw names at you, made up names. It's like a Final Fantasy story, a latter-day Final Fantasy story, where it's just loads of made up terminology thrown at you. But don't worry, there's an encyclopedia's worth of lore. Don't worry about that, because this is another game that's confused lore with an actual plot. So when they throw these made-up names at you, there is a literal encyclopedia in the game you can check. Yes, just like Destiny, the game that it's considered gauche to compare Anthem to, but you have to compare Anthem to it, because it's such a desperate attempt to chomp on Destiny's flavour. This is what EA was doing last generation with its Battlefield and Medal of Honor games. Activision had a major hit with the Call of Duty series, so EA looked at it and said, right, we're entitled to a piece of that pie. Whether we're actually entitled to it or not, we believe ourselves entitled to a piece of that pie. And they're doing it again with this big live service craze. They've got BioWare, known for its strong narratively driven games, with a game that's driven by no narrative, that's driven only by online play while shooting loads of really generic monsters, big bugs, vague masked things with guns, that's about it. You get some big monsters here and there, but they all look like things you've seen before, which is what Anthem is overall. Just a bunch of things you've seen before. About the only real differentiator in this game is the combo system, where you can set enemies up with certain attacks and then hit them with other attacks to deal extra damage, but Anthem does a terrible job of explaining the difference maker. It does a bad job of explaining most things. It just throws information at you and expects you to get on with it, which is fine because you can muddle through Anthem without really knowing or caring about anything. I know because I did, because the game didn't entice me with anything worth caring about. I don't care who the characters are. I don't care what their struggle is, because they rely on us to care about the storyline based mostly on what we know of the lore. And let me tell you this, Masters of the Universe, the old 80s cartoon, had a lore bible full of backstory, full of where all the characters came from, what they used to be called. Some of it was taken and put into later iterations on the show, but in the main show they had this massive bible of who did what, who was where, who was called what. Do any of you know about that in the 80s cartoon, or do you just remember a big yellow skeleton with a blue body going, "Yeah, you furry fool"? You remember the skeleton, because that's what was in the show. The game's also a complete waste of time. It wastes the player's time actively. You have to go between a hub, a sprawling hub with not a lot to do in it, except just talk to boring people. You got this hub, and then you've got the open environment in which the gameplay takes place, and you've got to move between those each mission. And the loading time between those two places is untenable. It's absurd. A bloody minute at least each time. Every time I was recording, a minute of the footage each time was the loading screen. Just sat there. Not even, of course, a fun loading screen. That would be too much. It's just a boring static picture. I know I keep saying the word boring and I should switch it up, but that's the watchword. That's how I felt playing this entire game. I wasn't entertained. But anyway, waste your time. Long loading screen, followed by you get into the mission world, and the game doesn't just start with a mission marker telling you where to go. They've got to get the dialogue out of the way first, and you might want to save time by just heading in the direction you spawned facing, but often the mission marker will be behind you. That got me a couple times. I thought, well, I'll move forward while the dialogue's going on, while the mission controls nattering away, just talking gibberish. And then, oh wait, no, the mission's behind me, turn around. And then once that's done, once you know where you're going, you've then got to move from point A to point B, which isn't really gameplay, it's just flying around. They seem to really want to show off the fact you can fly in this game, and you can. You can fly for a long time between mission markers. You get there, you shoot some enemies, you play a game of hot and cold, a really poorly implemented game of hot and cold, with this 4-directional green marker that points you in the vague direction of the thing you're picking up off the floor that's often the same shade as the floor, so you could miss it. And that's the game. That was most of my launch day for Anthem. Loading screens, shooting ill-defined generic enemies, playing hot and cold, and moving long distances. And that was it. Oh, and the cluttered UI is shit and all. So what does Anthem do right? A game I keep accidentally calling Destiny, because it reminds me of Destiny, because it's desperately trying to be Destiny. And not Destiny 2. No, this is like someone played the original Destiny at launch and thought they'd have a slice of that action. But what does Anthem do right? It's competent. Pretty much exactly what the demo displayed. It works. I mean, the demo didn't even work half the time, so it's got to step up on that. But in terms of gameplay, in terms of combat, you've got a variety of guns, you've got a variety of abilities on cooldowns. None of them are particularly spectacular. They're all things you've more or less seen in other games, but they get the job done. And that's Anthem's major core defining trait, is that it gets the job done. Not efficiently, not impressively, certainly not quickly, but it gets the job done. And I'm starting to believe that's by design. I'm starting to believe that was the the mentality that went into not making just this, but Fallout 76 and similar live service games. I think that they're starting to view games not as finished products in the AAA industry, but as shells, as starters, starter packs that you pay full price for, that they'll add content onto later to try and keep you playing, even though there are so many live servicey games out there that want you logging in every day, that people's time and money is dwindling, and it's not a sustainable thing. Even if Anthem does very well, they'll just want another one, and another one, that paradoxically we're also supposed to be playing forever. But it leads to games like this, where there's nothing going on, and you're supposed to expect it to get better over time, because that's what Destiny managed to pull off. Well, call me old-fashioned, but you've got to impress me the first time round. You've actually got to make a first impression, and a good one. Otherwise, I'm gonna move on. And I did move on because after wasting hours in this fucking game, I said out loud, I can't do this anymore, and I whacked Apex back on and had a right bloody good laugh. And that's my recommendation when it comes to Anthem. Pick a game that you're more interested in and play that instead, because it'll probably be more interesting. Unless you are really enjoying Anthem right now, in which case, best of luck to you.